Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. It's been a 3-day journey. We've been trying to figure out the truth of America. Race relations, the truth behind the Civil War and slavery. We know all the big stuff. We have that. But we've told you now in the last couple of days, yesterday we told you about the evolution of indentured servitude and then into slavery. And then after all the blood, sweat, and tears of the Civil War came Reconstruction, nightmare. Yet another example of the government coming in and trying to fix things that just went horribly awry because power and money were at stake. And when you couple government interference with the beginning of now, this is the beginning of the religious aspect dragging us back in. We had just escaped slavery. Now what's dragging us back in? Religion, social justice. This is Our Country by Josiah Strong. He was a minister. This is a recipe for disaster. He rose to prominence with a book about Anglo-Saxon supremacy called Our Country. He wrote that in it, powerful whites will move down upon Mexico, down on Central and South America, and upon the islands of the sea, over upon Africa and beyond. It was... oh, it's bad stuff. It is Manifest Destiny times 10. 1898. Strong found something called the League of Social Service. It became an institute for social service in America. He dedicated the rest of his life to the advocacy of the social gospel, religion. Religion and government. And they're about to come together again. 1903. New York Times article quoted President Teddy Roosevelt saying this of Strong's Institute, quote, apparently it is proving to be the beginning of a world movement, and it is being recognized as by the best men of many different countries as a necessity in each and all of these countries in order to facilitate the readjustment of social relations to the new conditions created by the modern industrial revolution. So we have to make progress here, all in the name of common good and God. Look out, a nightmare is coming. America, we've been doing the history of the civil rights for the past couple of days. We've shown you parts from each layer yesterday, and this was the best cake I've ever had, and I grew up in a bakery. The cake boss made this cake for us yesterday. It had different layers, different colors. It was tasty. The civil rights movement, the reason why we had that cake made is because we wanted to show the different layers of the civil rights movement. You know the big ones. The big ones. You know MLK. You know Abraham Lincoln. This program is not intended to be the end-all and be-all. We don't have enough time to go through every single layer of 400 years. What we're trying to do is show you the history that you aren't taught, to hopefully inspire you to go out and search more information. One of the mantras of this show, or at least of me, is question with boldness. Question everything. Listen, if you're going to college right now, don't you listen to those professors. Don't you just take it from them. You question them. You read everything they tell you not to read. You read everything they tell you to read, and then you read everything that they tell you not to read. You find out why they don't like it. Challenge them. Find out on your own what's true. These people, what are you paying for in college? All right, we've talked about the Indians. We talked about slavery, the beginning, indentured servitude, the worsening, the end of slavery, which is a nightmare. And that left us last night with segregation and continued forms of abominable discrimination. If you had to guess, as we move into the civil rights era, starting at 1960, if you were to guess which political party were the racists that wanted to segregate the population based on the rhetoric of today, what would it be? It'd be Republicans, right? Oh, they hate everybody who's different. That's what the politicians want you to believe today. I don't know. You'll have to decide what the truth is today, but don't base it on the past. Base it on today. Politicians now mold themselves with the early 20th century progressives. Look into the early 20th century progressives. They're nightmares. Now, I'm not here to tell you that all progressives are racist. All non-progressives are not racist. That's not true. race problems is a human condition. They're racist everywhere. But that's not the main part of any society. But you only hear one side of the story. So let's see what history shows us. And remember, keep in mind, these institutions, you look throughout history for these institutions. They should be keeping check on one another. Religion, commerce, science, and government. You just keep looking at these things. When you see them all start to collude, you're in trouble. Now let's look at one of the early 20th century progressives. I hate this guy, Woodrow Wilson. Lauded by modern-day scholars, ranked 8th on a U.S. News survey of our greatest presidents. Who did they survey? Your professor. Ask him why. You'd think Wilson was a wonderful president. In the beginning of his tenure, minorities had great hope for President Wilson. William Monroe Trotter, where is he? Here he is, this guy. He graduated magna cum laude from Harvard, devoted himself to the National Equal Rights League. He threw his support behind Wilson, who came in just at the end, promised change. Things changed, they sure did, after Wilson's policies radically departed from any of his campaign message. Gee, who does that? In an era where people like Trotter were trying to end segregation, Wilson, this SOB, I hate this guy. He had different ideas. He started to do all kinds of things. He imprisoned non-nationalized Germans in internment camps. Who were the first people to round people up and put them into a camp? Woodrow Wilson. He had 6,000 people forced into internment camps. Wilson also made the decision to listen carefully, re-segregate government offices. Well, Trotter went crazy on that. He sought a meeting with President Wilson. Remember, he's a big Wilson supporter. He sought a meeting with this guy. Finally got to him. Spoke to him. Didn't go real well. Wilson became angry with Trotter and told him, quote, "Segregation is not humiliating, it's a benefit, and your manner offends me." Oh, excuse me. The loving tenderness of Woodrow Wilson. S.O.B. Remember, historians laud this guy. They praise him. 8th best president of the country. Why? A guy who thought segregation wasn't humiliating. You see, they hadn't been segregating here in America for decades. Trotter was frustrated. He said, the president's statement that segregation was intended to prevent racial friction is not supported by the facts. For 50 years, Negro and white employees have worked together in the government departments in Washington. End quote. You know how that was reported? In the beloved New York Times. Do I have a copy of it? Put a copy up. Love this. President resents Negro's criticism. Oh. There is the quote that Trotter gave to President Wilson. 2 years ago, you were regarded as a second Abraham Lincoln. Now we colored leaders who supported Wilson are denounced in the colored churches as traitors to our race. Oh, wait a minute. Josiah, social justice. Now, the newspaper, this guy, race traitor. So now we have government and religion. President didn't budge. He stood by his policy of segregation. Remember, we are taught about the racist Republicans. Wilson was a Democrat and an early 20th century progressive. Read up on this guy if you want to see the future. Then we move into FDR. FDR, he continued the discrimination and segregation when he authorized during World War II a policy that we got from this guy. Internment camps was for the Germans. He expanded it. It was for the Japanese and the Germans and the Italians. Over 100,000 Japanese Americans alone were forced into camps called war relocation camps. Sounds pleasant. Can we go? There were separate camps for German American citizens to relocate. Okay, so you got that. Oh, and here's science. You have Margaret Sanger. Science lauded by the left for her family planning. Evil. Read her words. Evil. She was an open proponent of eugenics who wrote something to a congressman called, in 1932, A Plan for Peace, in which she proposed keeping the doors of immigration closed.